Stop being too friendly. We live in a world where kindness is celebrated, where empathy is needed, and where being friendly seems to be the ultimate virtue. But sometimes in our eagerness to be liked, to be accepted, or to make others feel comfortable, we forget something important: our own boundaries. It's easy to slip into the habit of being overly accommodating, to smile at everything, to say yes when we mean no, just to avoid tension. But here's the truth: constantly putting others' needs first, at the expense of our own, doesn't make us more likable. It can make us lose our authenticity. It can cause us to forget who we are and what we truly stand for. When we bend over backward to be everyone's friend, we can end up feeling disconnected from our true selves. We stretch ourselves thin, juggling others' expectations while ignoring our own. The question we need to ask ourselves is, what am I giving up in order to be this good friend? Now, being kind and thoughtful is wonderful, but we must also honor ourselves in that process. We need to recognize that it's okay to say no when we need to. It's okay to take space for ourselves. It's okay to establish boundaries that preserve our energy, our peace, and our clarity. So, let's stop being so too friendly, where we're friendly to the point of self-sacrifice. Instead, let's be genuinely friendly in a way that also nurtures our own well-being. Let's value our time, our needs, and our aspirations as much as we value others. Being authentic, being true to ourselves, and being intentional with our energy is the greatest gift we can offer to ourselves and to those around us. And when we stop being too friendly in the wrong ways, we can actually be more real, more grounded, and more available to the right kind of relationships, the ones that truly uplift and support us. It's time to stop trying to be everyone's everything. You are enough as you are, and the right people will appreciate you for exactly that. So set those boundaries, protect your peace, and remember, your time, your energy, and your spirit deserve to be honored. We live in a world that places immense value on kindness, friendliness, and empathy. Every day, we hear the message that being friendly, accommodating, and approachable is the key to forming meaningful relationships and achieving success. It's a simple truth. Kindness opens doors, it connects us, and it brings us closer to the people around us. But there's a subtle danger in overextending that friendliness, in trying to be everything to everyone, and constantly putting others before ourselves. The truth is, when we focus too much on being overly friendly, we can lose sight of who we truly are and what we truly need. At first glance, being friendly might seem harmless. In fact, it's expected in social settings. But when we start bending over backward to please everyone, to avoid conflict, or to make others feel comfortable, we run the risk of losing our own authenticity. Have you ever said yes to something just to avoid disappointing someone, even though it drained your energy or contradicted what you wanted to do? That's what happens when friendliness turns into self-sacrifice. We stretch ourselves thin trying to be everything to everyone, and in the process, we begin to lose touch with ourselves. You may have noticed that over-accommodating behavior often results in a deep sense of emptiness or frustration. The more we try to please others, the more we suppress our own desires, our own needs. This disconnect can lead to burnout, stress, and a lack of fulfillment. We become so wrapped up in maintaining the image of the friendly, helpful person that we forget to check in with ourselves. What do we truly want? What do we need? What makes us feel whole? This is why it's so important to realize that being constantly friendly can sometimes do more harm than good. Kindness is not the issue. The problem lies in being overly accommodating to the point where we neglect our own boundaries. There's a delicate balance between being generous with our time and energy and preserving our personal space and emotional well-being. When we're overly friendly, we might find ourselves agreeing to things we don't want to do, attending events we don't want to go to, or even making promises we can't keep. All of this can leave us feeling exhausted and resentful, even though we started out with the best intentions. One of the most powerful things we can learn in life is the ability to say no. But for many of us, that word feels like an impossible task. We fear that saying no will make us seem rude, unkind, or unhelpful. In reality, saying no is an act of self-respect. It's a way of honoring our time, our energy, and our priorities. When we learn to say no when it's necessary, we create space for what truly matters to us. Whether that's time for rest, time with our loved ones, or time to focus on our own personal growth. Saying no doesn't mean we stop being friendly or kind. It simply means that we are choosing to prioritize ourselves in a world that often demands more than we can give. There's a misconception that saying no equates to being selfish. In fact, it's the opposite. It's a way to protect our energy so that we can show up as the best version of ourselves when we are genuinely needed. Without boundaries, we give so much of ourselves that there's little left for us. It's essential to understand that setting boundaries isn't about pushing people away. It's about creating a healthy space for ourselves, where we can recharge, reflect, and reconnect with what's important. Moreover, when we stop being overly friendly and start being more intentional with our energy, we create room for more genuine relationships. We all have people in our lives who value us for who we are, not for how much we do for them. These relationships are grounded in respect, mutual understanding, and the freedom to be ourselves. When we focus on cultivating these authentic connections, we begin to attract the right people, the ones who don't expect us to be everything to them, but who appreciate us for who we are. We start to recognize that we don't need to constantly please others to earn their affection or respect. We are enough as we are, and those who truly care for us will embrace us for our true selves, not for our willingness to be perpetually accommodated. So let's take a step back and reflect on what it really means to be friendly. Being friendly shouldn't be about losing ourselves in the process of pleasing others. Instead, it should come from a place of genuine care and mutual respect. When we stop being too friendly in a way that compromises our own well-being, we free ourselves to be more authentic, to be more present, and to be more connected to the people who truly matter. It's not about withdrawing or becoming cold. It's about recognizing that we too deserve to be treated with the same care and respect we give others. It's about understanding that our own needs, desires, and boundaries are just as important as those of the people around us. Ultimately, we must remember that we cannot pour from an empty cup. If we keep giving without considering our own needs, we risk running dry. We are allowed to take time for ourselves, to say no when necessary, and to preserve our energy for the relationships and activities that truly bring us joy and fulfillment. When we do this, we become better friends, better partners, better colleagues, because we show up as our authentic selves, fully present and energized. The key is balance. Being kind, but not at the expense of our own well-being. When we find that balance, we can give from a place of abundance, not depletion. In our modern world, there is an unspoken expectation that we should always be friendly, always be kind, and always make others feel comfortable. Being friendly is often equated with being a good person, and we are constantly told that kindness is the key to success in relationships, work, and life in general. But the truth is, there's a fine line between being friendly and being overly accommodating, and too often we find ourselves crossing it. We start giving and giving, constantly prioritizing the needs of others while neglecting our own. And in doing so, we lose sight of who we are and what we need to thrive. It's easy to get caught up in the habit of being too friendly. We may feel the pressure to say yes to everything, to always go the extra mile, to put others' needs before our own. We fear rejection, fear that others will think we are unkind or selfish if we don't do what they want. But in reality, this habit of over-accommodation comes with a cost. The more we try to please others, the more we start to lose ourselves in the process. We begin to ignore our own desires, our boundaries, and our needs, all in the name of being liked or accepted. Over time, this constant giving starts to drain our energy, leaving us feeling burnt out, resentful, and disconnected from who we truly are. The truth is, when we are too friendly, we often find ourselves saying yes to things we don't want to do, or committing to plans that don't align with our values or priorities. We sacrifice our time, energy, and peace for the sake of others, believing that this is what it means to be a good friend, a good partner, a good colleague. But in reality, constantly overextending ourselves can cause us to feel more isolated, because we begin to resent the very things we once did with enthusiasm. We become exhausted, both physically and emotionally, because we're constantly giving without taking time to recharge. And as we give, we start to feel less connected to the things and people that truly matter to us, because we're too caught up in fulfilling the expectations of others. It's important to recognize that being overly friendly is not the same as being genuinely kind. True kindness comes from a place of balance, from the understanding that we are allowed to prioritize ourselves just as much as we prioritize others. When we are too focused on being everything for everyone, we forget to honor our own needs, desires, and limits. It's easy to slip into the habit of saying yes all the time. But when we do this, we risk losing ourselves. We may start to feel like we're living for everyone else, but not for ourselves. We forget to check in with ourselves and ask, what do I need right now? What will make me feel whole, grounded, and fulfilled? This is where the importance of boundaries comes in. Boundaries are the invisible lines that protect our emotional, physical, and mental well-being. They allow us to say no when necessary, to take a step back when we need to, and to prioritize our own health and happiness. Boundaries don't make us unkind or selfish. In fact, they help us be better friends, better partners, and better colleagues, because they allow us to show up as our true selves, fully present, energized, and able to give without feeling depleted. Without boundaries, we are like a cup that is constantly being emptied without ever being refilled. When we set boundaries, we are not pushing people away or being unkind. Instead, we are making space for ourselves so that we can show up as the best version of ourselves when we are truly needed. And this is not only necessary for our own well-being, but it's also beneficial for the people around us. When we prioritize our own needs and take time to recharge, we can engage in relationships from a place of abundance rather than scarcity. We have more to give, and we can do so without feeling overwhelmed or resentful. Learning to set boundaries and say no is one of the most empowering things we can do. However, it's often easier said than done. Many of us fear rejection or worry that others will think we're being rude or selfish if we don't always comply with their requests. But the truth is, saying no doesn't mean we're unkind or unhelpful. It simply means that we are honoring our own needs and recognizing that our time and energy are valuable. We all have limits, and when we don't respect those limits, we risk burning out. Saying no is a form of self-care, and it's necessary for preserving our mental and emotional health. When we stop being too friendly in a way that overextends us, we create space for more meaningful, authentic relationships. We attract people who appreciate us for who we truly are, not for how much we're willing to sacrifice for them. True friendships and connections are built on mutual respect and understanding. When we set boundaries, we invite those around us to do the same, creating a healthier, more balanced dynamic. We don't have to be everything to everyone, and we shouldn't try to be. We are enough just as we are, and the people who matter most will accept us for our authentic selves. Being genuine in our interactions, rather than being overly accommodating, leads to deeper, more fulfilling relationships. When we stop trying to please everyone, we start to focus on what really matters to us, the people, experiences, and values that bring us joy and fulfillment. We become more intentional with our time and energy, and as a result, we find ourselves in relationships and situations that truly uplift and support us. Instead of feeling drained, we feel nourished, and instead of feeling resentful, we feel grateful for the connections we have. At the end of the day, we must remember that our own well-being is just as important as anyone else's. We deserve to be treated with respect, to have our boundaries honored, and to have space to recharge and reflect. Being friendly is important, but being too friendly to the point of neglecting our own needs is not sustainable. It's time to embrace the power of saying no and setting boundaries that allow us to live more authentically, more balanced, and more fulfilled lives. When we do this, we not only take care of ourselves, but we also open the door to deeper, more meaningful connections with those who truly value us for who we are. In today's world, being friendly is often seen as one of the most important qualities we can possess. From a young age, we're taught to be kind, polite, and approachable. Friendliness opens doors, creates opportunities, and makes us more likable. But somewhere along the way, we've also been conditioned to believe that being too friendly is always a good thing, that the more we give of ourselves, the more we show up for others, the better person we'll be. This belief can often lead us to over-accommodate, stretching ourselves thin and constantly prioritizing the needs of others at the expense of our own. While kindness is undoubtedly a virtue, there comes a point when our eagerness to please others can start to undermine our own well-being. The core of this issue is the fear of rejection. We often fear that if we don't go above and beyond for others, they won't like us, or worse, they'll think we are unkind or selfish. It's easy to slip into the mindset that we must be everything to everyone. Always agreeable, always available, always the go-to person. We think that if we keep saying yes and continue being the accommodating friend, colleague, or partner, we will be appreciated, loved, and respected. But in reality, the opposite can happen. The more we give without recognizing our own needs, the more we deplete ourselves. The more we sacrifice our own time, energy, and peace, the less we have to offer when it matters most. We end up feeling drained, resentful, and disconnected from our true selves. There's a subtle yet important truth we must accept. Being overly friendly, in the sense of constantly putting others first and never saying no, can be detrimental to our mental, emotional, and physical health. It's easy to get caught up in the idea that being overly accommodating is a form of virtue. But in reality, it's a recipe for burnout. Over time, constantly saying yes can cause us to lose touch with our authentic selves. We begin to operate on autopilot, performing tasks, meeting demands, and pleasing others without checking in with our own needs or desires. We lose sight of what truly matters to us, and we forget to nurture the things that bring us joy and fulfillment. Instead of making authentic connections, we create relationships that are based on us constantly giving without receiving. This can leave us feeling isolated because we're no longer engaging in relationships from a place of genuine connection, but from a place of self-sacrifice. To break free from this pattern, it's essential that we start prioritizing ourselves. This isn't about being selfish. It's about recognizing that our own needs and boundaries are just as important as anyone else's. One of the most crucial steps in this process is learning how to say no. For many of us, this can feel like an almost impossible task. We fear that saying no will make us appear rude, inconsiderate, or unkind. But the reality is that saying no is one of the most powerful acts of self-care we can engage in. When we say no, we are protecting our energy, our time, and our well-being. We are recognizing that our needs are just as important as those of others, and that we cannot continue giving without taking care of ourselves first. Saying no is not about rejecting people or pushing them away. It's about setting healthy boundaries that allow us to honor our own needs. By saying no when necessary, we create space for the things that matter most to us: our passions, our relationships, our health, and our peace of mind. Without boundaries, we become like an overfilled cup, constantly being emptied without ever being refilled. Setting boundaries is about preserving our energy so that we can show up as the best version of ourselves when we are truly needed. We can't pour from an empty cup. And when we keep saying yes to everyone else, we leave little room for ourselves to thrive. The beauty of setting boundaries is that it helps us cultivate more authentic relationships. When we stop overextending ourselves, we create space for deeper, more meaningful connections. True friendships, partnerships, and working relationships are built on respect, understanding, and mutual care. When we are constantly giving, we may begin to attract people who only appreciate what we do for them rather than who we truly are. This can create a dynamic where we are valued more for our actions than for our true selves. But when we set boundaries, we invite others to do the same, which creates a more balanced, respectful, and fulfilling dynamic. By respecting our own limits, we encourage others to do the same, and this leads to healthier, more rewarding connections. As we navigate the journey of learning to set boundaries and prioritize our own well-being, it's important to remember that this process doesn't mean we stop being kind or friendly. Kindness is still an essential part of who we are. But being genuinely kind is different from being overly accommodating. Genuine kindness comes from a place of authenticity and self-respect. When we are kind, we are giving from a place of abundance. We have something to offer because we are taking care of ourselves. When we overextend ourselves in the name of being friendly, we start giving from a place of depletion. The energy we give out is not coming from a place of joy or intention, but from obligation and exhaustion. This is why it's so important to find a balance between being kind and taking care of ourselves. When we stop being too friendly in a way that compromises our well-being, we create more space for the things and people that truly matter. We begin to build relationships that are based on mutual respect and understanding, not on our willingness to give endlessly without expectation. We start to engage with others from a place of genuine connection. This shift not only helps us nurture healthier relationships, but it also allows us to find more fulfillment and joy in our lives. We become more present, more energized, and more in tune with who we are and what we need. In the end, we must remember that we are worthy of the same care and respect that we extend to others. We deserve to have our time, energy, and boundaries respected. Being friendly is important, but being too friendly to the point where we lose sight of ourselves is not sustainable. When we learn to set boundaries and prioritize ourselves, we not only protect our own well-being, but we also create space for deeper, more authentic connections with others. The key is balance. We can be kind, we can be generous, but we must also be mindful of our own needs. By embracing this balance, we can live more authentically, more fulfilled, and more at peace. In the pursuit of connection and acceptance, many of us find ourselves striving to be friendly, approachable, and agreeable. It's a natural desire. We want to be liked, we want to be seen as kind, and we want to form meaningful relationships. But as we try to make others feel comfortable, we may unknowingly push ourselves to the brink of emotional exhaustion. The belief that we must constantly be friendly to everyone at all times without fail can lead us into a dangerous cycle. While kindness is undoubtedly a virtue, there's a fine line between being genuinely friendly and being too friendly to the point of self-neglect. The first danger of being overly friendly is that we can lose ourselves in the process. In the quest to please others, we may start saying yes to things we don't truly want to do. We become so focused on accommodating others that we forget to ask ourselves, what do I need? We become trapped in a pattern of constantly giving, constantly saying yes, and constantly sacrificing our own wants and needs for the sake of others. The more we do this, the more we forget what it feels like to say no, and what it feels like to make decisions based on our own values and priorities. We might even begin to question our own desires as we get caught up in pleasing those around us. The pressure to be everything to everyone can erode our sense of self, and the more we neglect our own boundaries, the more we lose touch with what really matters to us. The second danger is emotional burnout. Over-accommodating behavior is emotionally taxing. The constant effort to please others, to stay available, to be the reliable one, or to show up even when we're exhausted can drain our mental and physical energy. We may find ourselves feeling resentful, not because we don't want to help, but because we have given so much of ourselves with nothing left to give. When we don't honor our own boundaries and emotional needs, we run the risk of becoming burnt out. Burnout doesn't happen overnight. It's a gradual process where small sacrifices, each one seemingly harmless in isolation, eventually lead to overwhelming emotional exhaustion. The symptoms of burnout can manifest as irritability, lack of motivation, and feelings of disconnection, but they are just the surface of a much deeper issue. We're giving to the point of depletion, and without self-reflection or recovery time, we can begin to feel bitter or resentful about what once brought us joy. The third danger comes from the tendency to attract unhealthy relationships. When we are too friendly, too accommodating, we often draw people who only appreciate what we do for them, not who we are as individuals. These relationships are based on what we can give, rather than a mutual exchange of care and respect. It's easy to fall into this trap. The idea that if we keep being nice, people will like us. But the reality is, relationships built on an imbalanced dynamic, where one person is always giving and the other is always taking, are unsustainable. We may find ourselves giving too much of our time, our energy, and our resources, but receiving very little in return. The more we overextend ourselves, the more we may attract individuals who take advantage of our kindness, relying on us for support without reciprocating in any meaningful way. Over time, these relationships can leave us feeling drained, unappreciated, and emotionally depleted. The key is learning to recognize when we are overgiving and when a relationship is no longer serving us. True connections are built on mutual respect, where both people feel valued and both give and receive in a healthy balance. The fourth danger is the impact on our mental and physical health. Constantly prioritizing the needs of others over our own can take a toll on our well-being. Stress, anxiety, and feelings of inadequacy can creep in when we fail to set boundaries. We may feel the weight of constantly saying yes to everyone, trying to juggle multiple demands and sacrificing our own time for the sake of others. Our mental health begins to suffer when we continuously suppress our own needs in favor of others' requests. Physically, our bodies can respond to stress with fatigue, headaches, and even chronic conditions brought on by long-term emotional strain. Our minds and bodies are interconnected, and when we push ourselves too far without rest or self-care, the effects can be damaging. Over time, the strain we put on ourselves can lead to more serious health issues, both physically and mentally. So what can we do to combat these dangers? The first step is recognizing the importance of boundaries. It's not selfish to protect our own time, energy, and emotional well-being. It's necessary. Learning to say no is one of the most important skills we can develop. By setting boundaries, we preserve our emotional resources and make room for the relationships and activities that truly matter to us. It's important to remember that saying no does not make us unkind or unhelpful. It simply means we are choosing to prioritize our own well-being. When we say no to something, we say yes to ourselves. We give ourselves the space to rest, recharge, and engage in the activities that nourish us.